The insult landed the way those insults always do when spoken by someone confident the room agrees with them. Not loudly, not with rage. Worse than that, casually, as if the judgment had been obvious from the moment he stepped through the garage door. Uneducated, the man said, with a dry little laugh, like he was naming a fact instead of a prejudice. The other two customers near the waiting bench went quiet. One looked down at his phone. The other stared too hard at the coffee machine. And Isaiah Turner, standing in navy coveralls with grease on one hand and a diagnostic tablet in the other, felt the old familiar stillness settle through his body. Not shock, recognition. He had been a black mechanic in a mostly white county for 14 years. He knew exactly how quickly some people decided what kind of mind lived inside a man wearing work boots. What the man did not know, what nobody in the service bay knew yet, was that less than 20 minutes later, the police chief would walk in, hear the tail end of the argument, and ask one question that would turn the whole room inside out. Uneducated, Chief Warren said. Then who exactly rebuilt my engine when every dealership in the county said it was dead? Turner and Sons Auto sat just off Route 18 on the edge of Millhaven, a town that liked to think of itself as practical, respectable, and fair in the abstract. In practice, fairness often depended on who your father was, how long your family had been in the county, and whether people thought your work required intelligence or merely hands. Isaiah Turner knew all three equations well. His grandfather had started the garage in the late 1960s with a single lift, a box of tools, and enough stubbornness to build a reputation in a town that had not wanted to give a black man much of anything. His father kept it alive through recessions, chain store competition, and the slow draining effect of being twice as good for half the trust. Isaiah grew up under hoods and around carburetors, listening to old men diagnose an engine by sound before a computer could tell you a thing. By 12, he could strip a transmission. By 16, he understood electrical faults better than most technicians twice his age. By 28, he held more certifications than anyone in 3 counties, though half the customers who benefited from them never bothered to ask. He was 39 now, broad-shouldered, patient, and precise, with the kind of quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly what he could do and no longer feeling the need to decorate it for other people. He had attended community college for 2 years before leaving to care for his mother when she got sick. And even after life redirected him, he never stopped learning. He took manufacturer courses, diesel training, advanced electronics seminars, hybrid system certification. He read service manuals for fun and rebuilt engines the way some people solve chess problems, by seeing relationships other people missed. Around town, the people who knew cars knew Isaiah Turner was the best mechanic for 50 miles. The people who did not know cars sometimes saw only a black man with oil on his sleeves and decided education belonged elsewhere. The man who said it that Thursday morning was named Brent Calloway. White, 53, local roofing contractor, expensive watch, sunburnt neck, and the hard-polished confidence of someone used to being the loudest opinion in any room. He had brought in a silver F-250 with a persistent knocking issue after 2 other shops failed to fix it. Isaiah had spent 40 minutes on diagnostics and found the real problem in 12, partial oil starvation from a warped pickup tube bracket causing intermittent pressure failure under heat. It was the kind of fault that sounds simple after someone smart has named it and maddening before then. Brent had not liked the estimate, not because it was dishonest, because it was high, and because Isaiah had explained it in terms detailed enough to make clear he knew exactly what he was talking about. Brent stood near the service counter with the estimate sheet in hand and a look of theatrical disbelief on his face. $960, he said. For that? For parts, labor, and the pressure retest after reassembly, Isaiah replied. Brent snorted. I asked for a repair, not a college lecture. Isaiah stayed calm. The explanation was free. A couple of younger techs working near Bay 3 pretended not to listen. They were listening closely. Brent tapped the paper with one thick finger. You mechanics love making things sound complicated, so regular people won't question it. Isaiah leaned one hip lightly against the counter. You should question it. That's why I explained it. Brent gave a short, humorless laugh. No, what you did was throw a bunch of big words at me. Those are the names of the parts. That drew the faintest smile from one of the customers in the waiting area, which Brent noticed immediately. Men like him hate becoming the least in-control person in a room. His face tightened. "You know what your problem is?" he said. "You think because you memorize some technical jargon, you're smarter than everybody." Isaiah looked at him for 1 second. "No, sir. I think your truck needs the repair I just described." Brent took a step closer. "I bet you never even finished college." There was the pivot. Isaiah felt it happen right on schedule. The argument was not going Brent's way on the facts, so now he needed a hierarchy that would restore his comfort. Education, status, the old categories. Isaiah had no intention of performing shame for him. "I finished enough to understand your engine," he said. Brent laughed louder this time, inviting the room in. "That's exactly what I mean. Uneducated." Silence spread fast. One of the younger techs, Luis, looked up sharply from a brake job. "In everything." Isaiah's jaw hardened by "in everything." Isaiah's jaw hardened by half a degree. That was all. "You people?" Brent shrugged with mock innocence. "Don't start twisting my words." But he had already said enough. Luis took one step forward from Bay 3. Isaiah raised a hand without turning around, a tiny motion that told him to stay out of it. Not because Isaiah needed help. Because he had learned long ago that when men like Brent are publicly challenged by more than one person, they recast themselves as victims. He kept his voice level. "Mr. Calloway, if you don't want the repair, that's your decision. But you're not going to stand in my shop and insult me." Brent smirked. "Your shop," Isaiah almost answered, but the bell over the office door jingled first. 3 uniformed officers stepped in from the lot, followed by Chief Daniel Warren. White, early 60s, square-jawed, steady-eyed, and carrying the kind of authority that did not need to announce itself. Millhaven's police chief had the old-fashioned habit of taking his city vehicles to Turner and Sons instead of the dealership because, as he once told a county commissioner, he preferred people who fixed problems over people who printed invoices. He had come by that morning to pick up a cruiser Isaiah had serviced and to drop off paperwork for the department's maintenance contract. He entered mid-tension, took one look at the room, and knew something had happened. "What's going on?" he asked. Nobody answered immediately. Brent straightened in visible relief, the way certain white men do when another white authority figure arrives, and they assume the social geometry will restore itself automatically. "Nothing serious," Brent said. "Just trying to get a straight answer from the mechanic." Chief Warren's eyes moved to Isaiah. "That right?" Isaiah didn't rush. "I diagnosed his truck. He didn't like the estimate." Brent folded the paper in half with aggrieved energy. "I didn't like being talked down to by someone pretending to be an engineer. I'm supposed to just nod along while he throws technical terms around like he's some kind of professor." He gave a short laugh and delivered the line again, now with backup he thought would support him. "Hell, man called me ignorant, like he's not the uneducated one in the room." Chief Warren stared at him for a beat. Then he looked back at Isaiah, then back at Brent. And in a voice so dry it almost sounded bored, he said, "Uneducated? Then who exactly rebuilt my engine when every dealership in the county said it was dead?" The room changed instantly. Brent blinked. "What?" Chief Warren took 2 slow steps farther into the shop. "My '69 Charger, numbers matching block. 3 shops told me it was done. 1 dealership wanted me to replace the whole assembly. Isaiah here tore it down, found the cracked oil gallery, sourced a machining specialist in Dayton, rebuilt the head, retimed the ignition, and had it running cleaner than it had in 15 years. He paused. "So if he's uneducated, I guess the rest of us are in real trouble." Luis looked away to hide a grin. One of the officers by the door did not bother hiding his. "Mean?" Brent started to gesture vaguely. "Mean?" Brent started to gesture vaguely with the estimate sheet. "I mean, come on, he's acting like he knows more about engines than you?" the chief asked. "Because from where I'm standing, that seems well established." The customer by the coffee machine almost coughed, trying not to laugh. Brent heard the sound and turned a darker shade. "I'm saying he doesn't need to be condescending." Isaiah spoke for the first time since the chief entered. "Explaining the repair isn't condescending." Chief Warren nodded once. "No, it's his job." Brent's eyes moved between them now, recalculating. The room he thought would support him had turned. He reached for safer ground. "Look, I didn't come here for a social lecture. No, Chief Warren said. You came here because your truck's broken and the man best qualified to fix it told you what was wrong. Everything after that seems to be your own poor judgment. There was no raising of voice, no theatrics. That made it hit harder. Brent looked around the shop, maybe hoping for one face to confirm that he still held the center of things. He found none. Luis had gone back to his brake job, but the set of his mouth said enough. The younger customer in the waiting area now looked openly fascinated. One of the officers stepped aside to let a parts delivery guy through, and the normal movement of the shop made Brent's humiliation feel even more complete. Life had resumed around him. His authority had not. He tried one last version of control. Fine, he said. Forget it. I'll take my business somewhere else. Isaiah nodded once. That's your right. Chief Warren added, might want to take your attitude with you. Brent gave him a hard look, then seemed to remember who he was glaring at and thought better of it. He crumpled the estimate halfway, smoothed it, then crumpled it again and stalked toward the door. Halfway there, he turned back toward Isaiah as if he needed the final word to survive. This place won't keep customers talking to people like that. Isaiah met his eyes. The people who know good work usually come back. Brent left without another word. The bell rattled behind him. The silence lasted 2 seconds. Then one of the officers muttered, "Damn," under his breath, and the whole room released. Chief Warren walked to the counter and set down the maintenance forms like they had not just witnessed a public unraveling. "Morning," he said to Isaiah. Isaiah smiled a little despite himself. "Morning, Chief. You good?" "I'm good." The chief nodded, but his expression said he knew good and fine were often courtesy words in moments like this. "Sorry I caught only the back end of it." "You caught enough." Chief Warren glanced toward the lot where Brent's truck was peeling out harder than necessary. "For what it's worth, he's an idiot." Luis laughed then, short and helpless. The tension broke for real. But news in a town like Millhaven traveled with supernatural efficiency, especially when humiliation attached itself to someone who usually relied on social rank to keep him comfortable. By lunch, 3 different versions of the story were circulating between the feed store, the diner, the hardware supplier, and 2 church parking lots. In all of them, the core remained the same. Brent Calloway called Isaiah Turner uneducated. The police chief shut him down cold. By evening, the story had improved further in the telling. In one version, Brent got escorted out. In another, he apologized and cried, which was untrue but satisfying to listeners. The truth was simpler and maybe better. A man with prejudice expected a room to support him. The room didn't. What most people outside the shop did not know was that Chief Warren's respect for Isaiah went back years. 6 winters earlier, the city's emergency response truck had blown a head gasket during an ice storm while every dealership bay in the county was closed. Isaiah had opened the garage after midnight, improvised a temporary seal and cooling workaround, and gotten the truck back on the road before dawn. 2 summers later, he helped the department identify an electrical fault in one of the cruisers that 3 factory technicians kept misreading as an alternator issue. He did not just fix engines, he understood systems. That was why Warren trusted him, not because he was generous, because he was excellent. Around 3 o'clock that afternoon, a woman in a charcoal blazer stepped into the shop asking for Isaiah by name. She introduced herself as Dr. Elaine Mercer, superintendent of the County Vocational and Technical Education Board. White, late 50s, brisk and intelligent. She had heard about the morning before noon, but she wasn't there because gossip moved her. She was there because Chief Warren had called her on his drive back to the station and said something close to, "If our schools were smart, they'd have Isaiah Turner teaching half the county what real diagnostics looks like." Dr. Mercer oversaw apprenticeship partnerships and trade instruction at 2 regional high schools. She had spent 3 years trying to modernize how the county treated skilled labor and was perpetually frustrated by the number of people who still used educated as shorthand for white collar. She shook Isaiah's hand and got to the point. "I heard there was some foolishness here this morning," she said. Isaiah smiled faintly. "That's one way to put it. I'm less interested in the fool than in what happened after." She glanced around the shop, taking in the diagnostic rigs, the rebuilt transmission on a stand, the laptop hooked into a diesel module, the neat order of a place run by people who cared about standards. "How would you feel about guest lecturing at the Technical Academy next month?" Isaiah blinked. On what? Engine diagnostics, electrical troubleshooting, career pathways, professional practice. Whatever you think students who are good with their hands and brains ought to know before the world starts underestimating them. She said it matter-of-factly but not casually. A lot of our students, especially black boys, get told trade excellence is somehow less intellectual than other forms of mastery. I'd like them to meet someone who proves otherwise before bad teachers or bad bosses convince them. For the first time all day, Isaiah felt truly caught off guard. Luis, eavesdropping shamelessly from Bay 3, almost dropped a socket. Isaiah looked at Dr. Mercer for a long second. I've never taught. You explain systems clearly under pressure. That's teaching with grease on it. He laughed once, soft and surprised. That's a new phrase. You can borrow it. He said he would think about it. She said thinking too long was often just reluctance dressed up as prudence, and left him her card anyway. That evening, after the bays were closed and the tools were hung back in their places, Isaiah sat alone on an overturned bucket near the rear workbench and let the day settle. The adrenaline had long since drained, leaving behind the quieter feelings that come later in these moments. Anger, yes, but not only anger. Fatigue. The particular fatigue of having your competence questioned in ways that are never only about the work. He thought about his father, who had once rebuilt a transmission for a man who refused to call him Mr. Turner, but still trusted him with a machine worth more than his own pride. He thought about his grandfather, who kept the original shop ledger where white customers in 1971 paid late, argued prices, and still came back because excellence has a way of making prejudice reveal its own dependence. He thought about how little the actual structure had changed and how much in some rooms it still had to. When he got home, his younger sister Naomi was already on the porch waiting with the expression she wore whenever the family group chat had been active all afternoon. Naomi taught 8th grade science and considered patience a useful tool for children and an optional one for adults. So, she said as he climbed the steps, I hear some man with a roofing company forgot you know things. Isaiah sighed. Who told you? 3 people and Aunt Bernice. Aunt Bernice's version includes lightning from heaven. That didn't happen. That's a shame. It would have improved the story. He laughed despite himself and sat down beside her. For a while, they watched the evening traffic thin out over the road beyond the yard. Then Naomi nudged his shoulder. You okay? He considered the question honestly. Yeah, just tired of certain surprises never being surprising. She nodded slowly. I know. After a moment, he told her about Dr. Mercer's invitation. Naomi turned toward him immediately. You better do it. I said I'd think about it. That means yes from any normal person and no from you. He smiled. Maybe I don't want to stand in front of teenagers all day. You already do, she said. They're just older and paying invoices. He looked out at the road again, thinking about what Dr. Mercer had said about boys being underestimated before they even had language for what was happening to them. Thinking, too, about how many times he had swallowed things in shops, parking lots, supply counters, service desks, because answering every insult meant you would never get any work done. Maybe there was something useful in telling the next generation that knowledge did not become smaller because it wore coveralls. He accepted the invitation the next week. The first session at the County Technical Academy took place in a fluorescent lab that smelled faintly of rubber and metal shavings. 23 students attended, most in coveralls, some skeptical, some sleepy, some alert in the way students become when they sense a speaker might actually know the difference between theory and reality. Isaiah stood beside a stripped V8 block and started not with credentials, but with a question. How many of you have ever had somebody assume you weren't smart because of what you wanted to do? Every hand did not go up, enough did. Once and tell you whether it's fuel, once and tell you whether it's fuel, spark, timing, or compression. By the end of the hour, nobody was sleepy. By the end of the month, Dr. Mercer asked him to return. By the end of the semester, the Academy had built a mentorship partnership with Turner & Sons for advanced diagnostic apprentices. Chief Warren sent 2 department interns through it the following summer. Luis became a certified trainer. Naomi told anyone who would listen that her brother had accidentally become educational. As for Brent Calloway, he did eventually get his truck fixed. Not at Turner & Sons. He took it to a dealership 40 miles away, paid more, waited longer, and, according to a cousin of someone who worked there, received the exact same diagnosis Isaiah originally gave him. That part circulated through town too. It always does. Pride is expensive, and small towns enjoy itemizing the bill. Months later at the county fall fair, Brent and Isaiah crossed paths near the tractor display. Brent was with two other contractors and clearly had not planned for the encounter. For 1 second, both men stopped. Then Brent did something nobody who knew him well would have predicted a year earlier. He nodded, not warmly, not humbly enough to qualify as transformation, but with visible effort. "Truck runs fine," he muttered. Isaiah looked at him. "Glad to hear it." Brent hesitated, then added, "Guess you knew what you were talking about." It was not a real apology. "Once. Usually do." Brent gave the tiniest nod. "Usually 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 do." Brent once. "Usually do." Brent gave the tiniest exhale that might have been embarrassment and moved on. Later that same afternoon, Chief Warren found Isaiah near the food tents and handed him a paper cup of coffee. "You know," the chief said, "I've been meaning to tell you something." "What's that?" "That line I used in your shop about who rebuilt my engine?" He took a sip. "Been waiting 6 years to say that to the right fool." Isaiah laughed so hard he nearly spilled the coffee. And maybe that was the best ending the story could ask for. Not that prejudice disappeared. It didn't. Not that one arrogant man learned everything he should have. He probably didn't. But the room had changed. The record had changed. A black mechanic was called uneducated in his own shop. And instead of swallowing it quietly, the truth stood up in front of everybody wearing a police chief's badge and a rebuilt engine's memory. The insult failed. The work spoke. And from that day on, in at least one county, more people learned to hear expertise before assumption, or risk looking like the dumbest person in the garage.